What's happening, everybody? Thanks for tuning back into my nonsense. So, what's on my mind today is the freight market and the job market. Some shit going down, let me tell you. So, here's what happened with me, right? I had a good job. If you follow my videos, but I was running more miles than what I wanted to, so I quit. Probably wasn't the best idea at this point. I didn't foresee this all gonna be going down, what's going down right now. So I took another job, as we do, and it sucked, and I didn't stay there, so I quit that one after a few weeks. And now here I am chilling at my little bash pad, right? Trying to find me a job. I've been off for a week, a little bit over a week actually. Now I will say I only started looking a couple days ago. I've just been fucking around. But there's some issues out there, and I learned some shit that I'm going to share. First of all, the freight market. That's actually pretty simple. You hear a lot of nonsense about it, but it's pretty simple. You can do your own research on it, of course, because I'm just a truck driver and what do I know? But it's real simple. The trucking industry, that's just the way it goes. I mean, you can look at the charts. Freight market goes up, it comes back down. This time of year, it always kind of goes down a little bit. It'll come back up again, right around Christmas, up until Christmas. Then it'll drop back off again for a couple months, and then it'll go back up again. And that's pretty much just a pattern. That's just what trucking is. So that's pretty normal, actually. But here's what's screwing the whole deal up with the rates and the volume of freight that's available. So during COVID, there was a lot of freight because everybody was at home, right? Ordering shit and all that, right? And there was also a lot of people that couldn't go to work because their jobs had closed down because of COVID. So they were sitting at home, they're hearing on the news and seeing on the interweb and all that good nonsense, the trucking industry making bank, right? And let's say they got a little money set aside. So they go out and buy them a truck or a couple trucks, and they get into the trucking industry, whether they're driving the truck or just hiring drivers. And things go well for them because we had record high rates. So that everybody was making money. Well, what that did is that put an influx of trucks into the system. So the way the rates in the market works, of course, is if you have a lot of freight and not very many trucks available, then the freight rates go up, right? And the volume goes up. If you have a lot of trucks available and not very much freight, then the rates go down. So now that the freight has slowed down because COVID is pretty much over, and it's a normal time of year for it to slow down, you have an influx of trucks in the market. So you got too many fucking trucks. Is basically what's going on with that, right? So what's going to happen with that is the people who didn't play their cards right, which is probably most, because I've seen this myself. Somebody went out and bought a truck, and then they were doing so well during that period, they bought another truck, and then that truck was doing well, and then they bought another truck. So they're basically spending their money as they get it, right? Which isn't a terrible business plan, but it's not the best business plan. So some thought, I've seen it, I actually know people that have gone from 0 trucks to 10 or more trucks in the last 2.5 or 3 years. That's not a good idea in trucking. That's not how trucking works. And these companies have been around 40, 50 years and whatnot. They'll tell you exactly that's not how that works. Too big, too fast. So what's going to happen here is this dump that we're seeing right now for everybody, whether you're a company driver, owner, operator, whatever. First, I'll say if you're thinking about buying or leasing a truck right now, don't do it. If you're thinking about quitting your job and you got a pretty decent job as a company driver, don't quit right now. I'll tell you that. So what's going to have to happen is as this storm brews and gets worse and goes through, the people who put money aside, and obviously the larger companies who can absorb a hit on this and keep their drivers going, and they got customer freight going outbound, say for instance, that a smaller company wouldn't have, better relationships with brokers, things like that, and more money. So let's say they can afford to haul a cheaper backhaul to get you back and get their bread and butter outbound customer load, right? So maybe they're not making much money on their backhaul, but they're making money on their customer outbound, right? or the companies who negotiated during that, right? So when the rates were real high, let's say you got a larger company that went ahead and took a customer contract at a much lower rate than what the rates were at that time, knowing that the rates would go down later. So at that point in time, let's say 2 years ago or whatever, when they negotiated them rates, yeah, they weren't making a shit ton of money off of hauling that freight for that customer compared to what the rates were paying at that time, right? But they were smart, because now that the rates have gone down, yeah, they weren't making bank off of hauling that, but they were making enough, and now they get to keep that freight because they got it under contract, because they took it at a lower rate than pre-planning for what's going to happen now. You understand? And for company drivers, if you're working for a company like that, unfortunately, a lot of them are larger companies, and I understand a lot of larger companies aren't the greatest to work for, but now you have a job because they thought ahead, and now they have freight for you to haul and shit, you know? Probably not going to affect you a whole lot, really. So these smaller companies aren't going to be able to absorb that loss and absorb this hit. So you're going to have, that's going to be the next thing you're going to start hearing is, oh, all these companies, trucking companies going bankrupt. It's record bankruptcy. Well, I can already tell you on that. Yeah, it might be a record bankruptcy, but they're going to play it out like gloom and doom, like the trucking industry's taking a shit. All you're doing, basically, you're going to start losing a bunch of the companies that popped up during COVID and during that huge, rate increase, freaking gold rush that went down, right? So they're going to start going bankrupt. People are going to make a big deal out of it. I mean, I don't mean to sound insensitive. That does suck if, that was your dream and you went out and got trucks and everything was looking good and now you're going bankrupt on it. But, man, the trucking industry is a tough deal. I mean, that's why I stay a company driver, to be honest. I don't want to fuck with all that nonsense. So once those companies start to go bankrupt and get out of the market, then obviously that's going to take a bunch of trucks out of the market, and that's going to balance it back out. So the rates and everything will bounce back out. Are they going to skyrocket again? Probably not. They're probably just going to bounce back out to normal. And I'll tell you, as far as what I was saying with the market deal right now, I heard this from 3 different people today at larger companies. Well, one was yesterday. I went and did an interview, right? And this is a large company, been around for like 40 or 50 years, well known in the area. And I interviewed with him. Everything sounded perfect. It was all right down the line. But then he told me, he was like, there is kind of an issue. What our ad says, I don't know if you're going to make that right away right now to start off. And I'm like, well, what do you mean to start off? Because I wanted to go work there. The truck was new. Everything was good. But he was saying that with the freight volumes being low right now, that they're kind of struggling to get their drivers miles that they have. So he was being straight up with me. I was like, well, I don't want to do that, so I just left there. Well, then today I was waiting for a call back for an interview that I did yesterday. And I finally talked to her, and she was like, yeah, I really want to hire you on, and we will hire you on. But I got to tell you, same thing. Freight volumes are low, and right now our drivers are only getting like 2,500 miles a week. So what our ad said, you're not going to be making. Myself, I couldn't even pay my bills on 2,500 miles a week at what they were paying. Literally could not even pay my fucking bills. So I admire them for being, straight up and not fucking me around on that whole thing. But that was 2 fairly large companies for this area and pretty well known. So it's definitely in a slump. I'm just going to throw in here a few tips on looking for a job, all right? It's gotten pretty shady out there. So when you're looking at these ads, right, and you're seeing, first of all, like Indeed, Glassdoor, Simply Hired, obviously those are more reputable job sites. Craigslist, I would say, is almost 100% bullshit. Now, I will say that years back, my friends were laughing at me for getting a job on Craigslist, and I stayed there for like 3 years and made good money. But they're pretty hit and miss on there. So you're looking at Indeed, right? For instance, and it's saying, we're paying $1,200 to $1,600 a week, or $1,400 to $1,800 a week, or You know, that's pretty much what you're seeing in my area. That's pretty legit. They're probably being pretty legit about that. Now, when you switch over to the other ones, which there are some on Indeed like that, and they're saying like, you know, you're gonna make 1,800 to 2,800 a week, or 1,600 to 2,500 a week, and you're home every weekend, and all this stuff. You really gotta stop and think about that. Like, how much are you paying, and how does that work that I'm gonna make $2,800 a week in 5 days? That's pretty tough. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's pretty much possible. And if you haven't watched my videos before, I run ag exempt in the past and COVID exempt. I run 800, 900 miles a day. And that's why I quit my other job, because it was too many miles. It sounds good. The paychecks are great. If you don't believe they're real, go watch my Melt Money video. There was weeks I made over $3,000, right? But I was doing that in 8 days. You know, and even the ones where I was making 2,700 a week, 2,500 a week, that was 7 days, not 5. That's pretty fucking hard to do. I don't even know if it's mathematically possible. So right there, that's a huge red flag, right? Then you see the 1099. I know some guys are like, oh man, 1099, you pay less taxes, blah, blah. I'm gonna do a whole other video on that. Just skip right past the 1099s. And then watch my video that I got coming up here on 1099 versus W-2. Some of them are just straight up full of shit. Like, I've talked to 6 different companies today. And, like, let me give you an example on this one guy had to add, you know, like $2,800 a week, blah, blah, this line haul deal and all that. It sounded pretty good. It almost sounded like it was legit, right? It says new equipment, so on and so on. So I call him up, I talk to him, everything sounds good. I said, hey, what's the truck? 2016 Peterbilt. Really? New equipment. I was like, okay. So how many miles does this truck have on it? I mean, if you think about it, you're averaging 100, 140,000 or whatever a year, right? If you're running a truck or more. 780,000 miles on it. That's not new equipment, dude. Now, don't get me wrong. If the run was right, like he said, and the amount that he was paying and the amount of time it took to do the run, if the truck was in decent shape, I really don't give a fuck if it's got 780,000 miles on it for what the run was going to pay. I would drive it. I'd clean it up and drive it if it was, you know, a reasonable truck. But right away, he fucking lied, you know. So I was like, I ain't dealing with this dude. See you later. And I had that happen several times down there. They're like new equipment, and I'm like, what kind of truck you got? I got a 2017 Volvo. How the fuck is that new equipment? That's not new equipment. Like, what the hell are you talking about? They're having no place to park the trucks. You know, I ran into that with several companies. They're so small and such fly-by-night bullshit going on that they don't even have a place to park the truck. Don't get me wrong, you know, I took trucks home for like 6 years. That's not all what it's cracked up to be. It works for some people, it doesn't work for others. Myself, I can't. I live in an apartment right now. So, you know, these places were a little ways away from here. And I was telling them, you know, like, okay, where do I park the truck? And they're like, well, you know, you can just park it at Walmart or a truck stop or something. I'm like, really? Like, I hate it when people do that, clog up Walmart and shit because they're leaving their truck there for the weekend. It's just a bullshit move. Here's what I'm saying. I understand, okay, let's say I can't make it back to the terminal or whatever, right? That happens. But even with the one guy, I was like, yeah, I'm not real comfortable with that. Like, I don't even have any truck stops around here, and I'm not leaving the fucker at Walmart every week, really. Then I gotta leave my pickup sitting in Walmart parking lot. That's just pretty sketchy. So I told the guy, I was like, I have a place I can park it. It's like somewhere between $80 and $100 a month the guy wants to park it. It's a secure place. It's actually a storage unit where I store my shit. But the guy didn't want to pay for that. I mean, he runs a truck. Think about the revenue on a truck, right? And he's worried about paying $100 a month to have his truck parked, but then expects me to pay the $100 a month. Like, technically, I shouldn't even be worried about $100 a month because then I don't have to drive my pickup back and forth to work. So I would actually save or break even what I pay in gas to drive back and forth to work. But it's just the principle of it. If you're worried about $100 a month to park your truck, you're running some sort of shady bullshit company, dude. If you're running a truck, $100 shouldn't mean nothing to you. You got to read the reviews. That's for sure. Like what I was running into is I would call these places up and they're so fucking shady that as I'm talking to them, they're gonna pay this mile, they're gonna give me this truck, they're gonna do this, and here's the run, here's the miles, and all that stuff that you're talking about, right? And I'd be like, "What's the name of your company?" And then they would skirt it and be like, "Oh yeah, and we have APUs and refrigerators and blah," and they'd go on. And then I'd be like, "So what's the name of your company?" And then they would skirt it. We do our own maintenance and skirt it again. And it's like, okay, he's trying to avoid saying the name of his company. Like, why would you do that? It's not like I'm asking you where you live, or anything like that. It's your company. It's a public company. It's the company I'm going to drive for. It's the company that I expect my paychecks to be deposited. And you don't want to give up the fucking name of it? Like, really? So then when I would get these names, I had this happen 4 times today. When I would get these names, I would go on the internet and I would do the reviews on it, and they were terrible fucking reviews. I mean, you know how reviews go. People are always complaining about shit, but if you know what you're reading, you can kind of read through it. And then another thing with them is what I found is they're guys who are actually leased on to other companies, right? So they'll have a few trucks and they got them leased on to another company. So then when they finally give me their name, then I go online and I start doing my research on their company, and I find out that they're leased onto this other company, right? So let me give you an example like this. So let's say this guy wants to pay me 55 cents a mile to drive his 2017 fucking Volvo, right? Well, I look at the company that he's leased onto, right? And go on their website. They're paying 62 cents a mile to drive a newer truck. Why would I go work for this guy for 55 cents a mile in his old truck when I could go work in this newer truck over here for more mileage and be a little more secure that I'm going to actually get my paycheck and stuff? Because I've had that in the past, a long time ago. I had a company that didn't pay me and I never did get my money for that. So that doesn't make much sense. I'm not saying that driving a truck for somebody who's leased on with someone else is totally a bad idea. You might find the right one, but overall, there's something going on there. Now, I did find a company that I'm going to interview and drug test with tomorrow that is actually probably better than any company I've worked for yet, because I do know of them. And I want to tell you a little tip on this, that all the years I've been doing this shit, trust me, like, I don't try to sound like a know-it-all. I learned this shit through trial and error. That's why I want to share my shit. And I even kind of forget what I learned and do stupid shit myself sometimes. So as I was going through Indeed and Simply Hired and Glassdoor and Craigslist and all this shit, calling all the bullshit, like I was saying, fucking around with this stuff for 2 days, it dawned on me of how that I know better than to do it that way. So what I decided to do is I'm just going to start calling companies that I know are around, right? Companies that I've seen around that I know are good companies. And I picked up the phone and I called one. Now their ads, and they're not running an ad or nothing. And they were like, hell yeah, come on over. So I'm not going to go too much detail into that place, but it's a good job and it pays real well. But this is what she told me, and she owns the place. They do that on purpose. They don't run ads. They want drivers to see their trucks because they got nice equipment. They want drivers to see other drivers and so on and so on. And then the drivers will come in that way. And the reason being is because they don't just hire just random truck drivers, which most companies nowadays, they don't give a fuck. If you got a Pulse and a CDL, you're in a truck, you're out of here. That's not necessarily the best. It's good for people who are just getting in the industry, but it's not necessarily the best for us old dogs that have been in it for a while. And another nice thing about these, just randomly calling companies that you've seen around and you think look like good companies or you heard were good companies, is sometimes, yeah, they are, they just might need one driver, or they'll put an extra one on, or I've even had them tell me like, hey, I'll create another lane, we got freight, we got an extra truck, whatever, I'll create another lane. But they're not necessarily hungry and like throwing out all these bullshit ads and giving you all this nonsense trying to get you to come in the door. Well, here's a nice thing that I realized today myself. When I was talking to this lady who owns this company, right? They are across the street from the company that I worked for 4 years. That's why I know of them. Well, she was telling me that the company I was working for 4 years there, they're starting to slow down. So some of their drivers are coming over there trying to get jobs. Well, they won't hire them because they don't just hire any driver. So that's a good thing because, like she said, you know, you got to keep your truck clean. You got to keep your trailer and stuff clean. Because if you watch my other videos, you know, I was picking up trailers with damage and, you know, people weren't sweeping them out. And that's just been the story of my life forever, you know. Tires flat, no one rode it up. And they went and hauled some junk and it's crap in the reefer and they never got it washed out. And now I'm here picking it up and I got to go get a load and it's a huge fucking hassle. And nobody ever does anything about it. I can tell dispatch and they don't do anything about it. Because they're just hiring random run-of-the-mill fucking drivers trying to fill the seats, you know. Well, I'm hoping this company works out because she said that's not tolerated there. You know, like you're out of there. And she also said that they keep the amount of trucks they have low on purpose because they don't want to be huge. So that's a good thing. So this might be a good thing. And that's my take on all that. So I will keep you posted. I am going to go there tomorrow and find out what's going on with all that. Everything looks good. And as always, if you get something out of the videos, hit that like and subscribe button, throw me a comment, email me, do whatever you got to do.